Another edition here of Getting There with Guys, where we talk about the career journeys of athletes, coaches, media members, business owners, and more from upstate New York. Capital Region fans will know this guy. It has been too long since we have reconnected. He's doing some great things that we're going to get to. He is Eric Hannmann. Eric, for those who may not know, let's go back to a younger version of you, 6, 7, 8 years old. Where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be as a kid? And was it that same dream job you wanted when you were 18 years old?
Yeah, I feel like it's a cliche in this business sometimes when you say, like, when you were younger, you did, used to do announcing in my backyard and all that good stuff. But yeah, East Greenbush, New York, 10 minutes from Albany, Columbia High School. Grew up there, born and raised. And yeah, I had an idea. Like, I loved sports from obviously a young age and all that. And I used to play in the backyard, baseball to myself, and come up with either fake players or real players, simulate games, announce it in the backyard. Sometimes you do the whole mute the video games and you commentate. So I like to like branch off from that path sometimes because I always feel like it's cliche and it's like, oh yeah, he was doing it for. So yeah, I fit that mold, I guess. Of I've always kind of knew I wanted to do it, but yeah, it was a decision that grew over time, but it was there from the beginning.
Well, let's talk about your college decision then, because you are growing up in East Greenbush. Upstate New York is known for broadcasting schools. Take us through the process, because, a little spoiler, you do not end up at a traditional, I would say, broadcasting school.
No, definitely not. And I'll get into my experience at Fairfield University a little bit later after I talk about how I got there. But yeah, I guess in like high school, for me, I never really thought about what I wanted to do like that much. It's just kind of like go to school, get good grades, play sports. And so, those things that I used to do, I used to, announce games from the bench. Like, people would, be like, oh, there's Hannman down there, kind of giving his own commentary on the games, because I didn't actually play enough basketball in my I would have liked to have gotten on the court a little bit more. I'm not going to say that I didn't play enough because that was the coach's decision. And I respect it still. But so yeah, eventually, we're there senior year in high school. And so, hey, you got to apply to college. Well, that was junior year, right? Sophomore, junior year, they tell you to start thinking about it. You got to apply to colleges. Like, you got it. So that comes around. And I remember I was with my best friend, Danny, childhood best friend. We were friends from, when I was in preschool. And so, it was great because it was like, we're off of school because we get to go to this college fair. Like, that classic, the field trip feeling. For this, it was that feeling for me, except for it was a college fair. So it had to do with your life and possible big career decisions or life decisions, if you will. But it was still that feeling of, I'm out of school. Like, let's have some fun here. Like, remember having my iPod on the bus over to Hudson Valley and just being like, just enjoying it. And so, yeah, let's go here, let's go there. And I knew communications was going to end up being at that point. I was like, all right, I think I like the sports broadcasting thing. Like, let me try to pursue that, see where the good schools are. And so, like, my parents obviously put Syracuse out there and all this. But at this college fair, we come across Fairfield University. Didn't know much really about it other than the fact that it was in Sienna's conference, right? Like, I grew up Sienna was fantastic when I was in middle and high school. I think that was the year they made the tournament a few times. And so I only knew them as a MAC team. And so they talked about where they were located and really sold, the fact that New York City was close by and that there was internships. How that turned out, we can get to how those promises kept. It was a great sell job, I guess, if you will, because those things are very competitive, as you know. But it really stood out to me. So I applied, I visited, I liked it. And it came down to a few universities, a few colleges. And that I was like, you know what, Fairfield is the college I'm going to choose here. So I always, like, my parents always tell me, oh, you loved it. You really wanted to go there. How I remember it was this, okay, here's the process. Okay, the internship thing, that's interesting. Okay, and then I liked it. It was all of a sudden I got two to choose from, and all right, yeah, I'm gonna choose Fairfield. So that's not the most glowing story about it, but that's the truth.
I hope my memory's not giving me a disservice here. I could have sworn there was a sibling, like your sister was involved or something too, right? Am I totally off on that?
I think if there was a sibling that where there was a decision, the third school, because I said 3 and then 2, I kind of contradicted myself in that last soliloquy. It did come down to 3. One of them was Siena, and my brother had gone there, so I kind of was like, I had gone through so many camps at Siena: baseball camp, volleyball camp, basketball camp. I stayed with my brother when he was there, so I didn't. But I felt like I had the Siena experience already. If that is, it's so silly, but like I kind of felt like I kind of knew what it was like to eat in that cafeteria and like be on that campus enough. And so that kind of ruled that one out mentally because my brother had gone to Siena and I already had that experience. So maybe that's what you were thinking of. But
yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Who
I was
knows?
close. I knew it was a sibling. Maybe your sister lived in London. I don't know. I'm getting maybe your sibling's child.
She did live in London for a little bit.
There
So
you go.
but how does that relate? I don't know.
I don't know. Just trying to grasp at straws there. Okay, so you go to Fairfield. Fairfield's the decision. You're going to Fairfield. You gave me some beautiful teases there to talk about your experience as a stag. So you referenced the internship. I want to kind of clear that up a little bit. Did they, when you were going through this process as a high school senior, you went to Fairfield, was it the expectation of, okay, I'm going to Fairfield and they're going to give me an internship here? Did you not understand the concept? Walk us through like kind of the idea of why you felt like internships were far more important and maybe more of a challenge than you realize. Hopefully that's the right way to phrase that for how you wanted it to get set up.
Yeah, but like, as you know, internships, especially in this business, are extremely important. And the one that I ended up landing was very big for my career, which we'll get into a little bit later. But yes, I'll just say New York City. There's a lot of places in New York City. I don't want to name any company or any different one. I will name one because I did work with SNY through Fairfield. So that was like a great resume building thing. Like SNY was who we did the games for, so I was kind of working with them a little bit doing the Fairfield games. So there was kind of an internship in that regard. It wasn't like a real internship per se, but it was something I could put on the resume. So the fact that we were so close and we would put games on SNY, that helped me out and working those basketball games in Fairfield, actually Bridgeport. But yes, there were opportunities that, okay, New York City is there. Yankees, Jets, like there's a lot of, it's the media capital of the world, really, in terms of sports. Obviously, there's a few others, but like New York in terms of sports, WFAN, all those great stations. I named another station, but you know about it. Like that's right. The place where sports was, so it would be a good place to go. And then Fairfield's not that far away. I mean, we took plenty of train rides in my 4 years there. And so it would have been easy to do internships there. I did have a few opportunities that I applied to. I just didn't land any of them. So the promises were made, and you know, I'll take responsibility. Like maybe I didn't do enough to get those internships, but like I said, the one that I did end up landing played huge dividends in my career, I would say.
One of those is 104.5 The Team, ESPN
yes.
Radio, where you and I met up during this internship. By the way, a little tease. Your fellow intern is Drew Zlogar at that same time, who ended up working for the XFL and the NBA, and he's doing stuff with a sponsor we cannot mention because of a competing sponsor here on the logo below, so we can't mention that. So shout out to Drew. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about your first experience in the radio side of the world and what those type of responsibilities were and how you landed the internship, especially for the younger people.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for a cameo from Drew here to bring back the old gang. How about Dubs and you know, Woods and all those guys. Yeah, no, that internship. So I will say this about the internship. If I'm looking to inspire people, I guess it doesn't hurt to speak up sometimes. I mean, I got the call that, hey, we're going to go with people who are entering their senior year, like older people. Originally, I can't tell you, you know, the feeling that I had was, you know, maybe it was just they didn't have enough room for me, right? But the way it was phrased to me was, hey, we're going with the older upperclassmen. We want to go with upperclassmen. So I said, well, I am the upperclassman. Like, I'm going into my senior year. So the person who was responsible for hiring the internship said, give me a second, hangs up. And next thing you know, he's like, yeah, all right, we'll fit you in here. So, you know, sometimes it pays to speak up a little bit, especially when you're like, wait a second, you know, that does that I'm qualified, or I fit that mold. I fit what you just said there. And it turned out that I was able to work my way in, because I think originally there was already 2 interns. They said my feeling was, and I just want to be honest with how I felt. Like I felt like maybe they added me as a third, and it turned out one of them fell out, so I was one of 2. So it worked out well. And so I landed the internship at 104.5 The Team, as well as, I don't know if you know about this, I'm one of the few interns for Hot 991 as well. because
Yes, the hip hop
I did have a
station.
day a week where I would do things for our good friend Supreme uh for Hot 991. So it was actually a very well-rounded internship for me because I was able to do things for the team and Hot. But no, that was probably the game-changing internship. So I mean, in my time at Fairfield, there was no sports broadcasting major, so I was actually in the film, television, and media program. So I did a lot of stuff that had to do with film. So I was on film sets and I was boom operators and doing learned how to gaff and all of those things that you never would have to learn per se for sports broadcasting. Uh, they might still, I don't know, they might teach it, at certain places, but the way that I did it was, okay, I'm doing a film, television, and media program, but I'm going to make my own major. So that's why I worked with those games for Fairfield and SNY. I had a couple radio shows on the local 88.5. 88.5? See, I might have already forgotten Fairfield's flagship station. But yes, so at that time, I already knew I liked doing the radio thing. I had a 2-hour web show that I would say probably my parents and maybe my great uncle listened to, but and maybe the friends as well. But I knew I liked doing that, and what solidified that and really maybe introduce for the first time what was like not only behind the scenes but on air and all that was at 104.5 team, and the internship was it molded what. Like it confirmed what I wanted to do. It was like, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. And I'm having such a good time here. Not even in the place I want to work myself too. Like I'm at the spot where I'm an intern and I'm having this much fun. I know if I keep working hard and keep my head down, I can get to, build my way up. And it just turned out I texted you the summer after I graduated. And we needed a board up, and boom, next thing you know, I'm running games, Susan Waldman, John Sterling, and that's how my foot got in the door. But the internship was the key to open that door.
Yeah, I want to get back to that email because that's an important part of your career that I hope young broadcasters, aspiring broadcasters know, because there's something important to that. I do want to flip that, just to add a little context here. Armin Williams is the program director, brand manager at the time. He moves on to Denver and Houston in his career. Jeff Levac, who a lot of people know, he is there at that time. I'm there in a producer role. Andrew Williams, who you mentioned, is now with BetQL down in Odyssey. So Brady Farkas is there, who's doing some great stuff. So it's, I don't want to say an all-star. I think that's too big of a compliment, but an experienced group of broadcasters in the mid-2010 decade that you are with at that point, kind of all growing through their careers at that point. Also to add to this, you mentioned the internship and how it comes together, but Fairfield as a curriculum is film. There are some places, I'll use my own alma mater, because it's a recent episode here, probably right below you on our audio side from Tyler Terrence, that talks about you have to teach yourself. Like when you're going through film and you want to be a sports broadcaster, did you ever find yourself putting more pressure on yourself? Did you find you had to do more things on your own? How did that process feel for you in those college years where it's like, hey, I got to do this. This isn't what I want, but I got to be more independent than other broadcasters I'm competing against.
Yeah. So, another thing that I was involved in that was very close to the program that I was in, it's a very small program. And so we were all close knit. Like we all wanted to help each other, right? The parts of, the program is from a young age, you get a chance to work on the capstones for the seniors. The seniors have to make a senior capstone. And so most of them, actually all of them, I mean, mine was a film too. So all of them are films, whether it's, a scripted show or a scripted movie or a short film, obviously, or a documentary. And so it kind of was we're going to help what you want to do. We're going to help you out. And so when I was a freshman, we did Stag TV, and they did a thing called Fresh Meat, where they would have basically a 30-minute show. Someone would produce it. And, for anyone who wanted to try different things, try to be a talk show host, how do you want to do this interview? And so I was able to do a sports segment on there. We actually parlayed that into a show, very creative here, guys, called Second Take. It was a TV show. So I was able to build TV into what I wanted to do as well, not just radio. And so I was able to get that experience. And first ever in the history of Stags TV, sports director right here. I have no idea if that continued after I left, but I was technically the first ever sports director. So yes, long roundabout way. Yeah, I felt that pressure. Like you need, okay, what can I do to keep building my resume? It looks good, Stacks TV director, but even now I'm like, what did I do as that? Like, what exactly did I do? And we did produce our own. So I know I mentioned I work with SNY, but we did produce our own for Stacks TV. I think we did 1 or 2 volleyball games and 1 women's basketball game, and that was very stressful to put that all together. I mean, you're making sure you have a director, you're making sure you have enough camera ops, and so Costas was our advisor, and he was very helpful in guiding me through that process, and basically just learn on the fly. I mean, everything was just learning on the fly, whether it was working for those basketball games. I also worked lacrosse games. So yeah, it was a lot of learning on the fly and just making sure, oh, they need someone to work this game, or they needed someone to work that game. I better go do it. So, because I was responsible for my own major, really, as you kind of put it. And I had some others that were interested. And I say others, really only one other comes to mind, but that were interested in some kind of sports community or sports broadcasting. And, she was very helpful. We kind of helped each other out a little bit as well. So it was a team effort. And so as long as you showed you're going to help them out, basically, and be a team player, they would do the same for you, which is why people volunteered to help work those games. And it was good for their experience as well.
I want to make sure I clear something up. You said it in passing quickly. Costas, as in Bob Costas, was your advisor.
No, his name was Costas. I didn't want to butcher his last name because it's very
No, that's okay. I think people would have heard that and been like, wait, he was working with Bob Costas in college, and he just quickly passed through that with no disrespect to your advisor. I just wanted to clear that up for somebody who might have heard that in passing and thought, whoa, that's incredible. And
I just interviewed Bob Costas once, so
nice, man. And you know what? That's a perfect segue here, because the timeline here of this, I believe, adds up while you are still a student. I hope this is correct too, of your Tommy John film.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go through this for those who don't know about what happened with Tommy John and how this becomes a part of your career.
You have a huge role in this. I don't know if you know this, but you have a huge role in this. I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, the aforementioned capstone. So we all have to do something for our senior year, and it's mainly short films or documentaries. And so for mine, I'll be honest, senior year, no idea what I was thinking about doing. Like, it just was a lot to throw at you. You have to make this film. But what am I going to make? Because as we've been talking about here, I'm not doing film, television, and media to become a filmmaker. Did I grow a love for movies and look at movies differently and really appreciate having that as part of my major? Absolutely. I mean, that was something that my mind was open to, my eyes were open to, of having that experience doing the film sets that I was on. Like, awesome stuff. But that was not something that I was going to do. I mean, I needed to do something that was going to capitulate or capsulate the sports broadcasting major that I made for myself. And so one of the things that we did at 104.5 The Team, I don't know if you remember this, but I can't remember exactly where it was. It was at one of, I believe, the children's hospitals. But Tommy John was in town, and he was going there to sign autographs. And so it was during one day of my internship. I happened to be working that day, and you said, Eric, come with me. I don't know if that was your decision or Armin's decision, but it was, Eric, come with me to this. We're going to go interview him. I think you really needed someone to hold the camera, but but it was awesome. It was an awesome experience. He was so nice to everybody there. It was great to see Tommy John. And so I just remember liking his personality a lot and really learning more about him as a player. So if I can parlay this into what the documentary became about, was, oh, this is Tommy John. This is the first guy to get that big surgery that changed everything in terms of Major League Baseball, right? Sandy Koufax could have pitched longer is the thing that a lot of people speculate had Tommy John been invented earlier. And so, yeah, I knew Tommy John. Everyone's talking Tommy John surgery this, Tommy John surgery that. But I didn't know much about Tommy John. I mean, he played in the 80s. I think retired maybe – he played a long time. He played 70s and 80s. But I think he retired like right around when I was born. And so I didn't know much about him as a player and learned a lot more about him through that experience, loving his personality, loving your interview with him, and realizing this guy's pretty darn good. And then I realized he's also not in the Hall of Fame. And I was like, wait a second, this is something. And so I reached out to you, You gave me his email. He was very, very graceful to respond to me, and said, "Hey, yeah, just come by the Palm Springs golf side townhouse or whatever you want to call it, and just let me know when you can do it." And he's retired. He doesn't, he lives there with his wife. Whenever you want to come by, just let me know. And set it all up during spring break. We fly out there to two PAs, or two. I call them PAs now, but they were there to help me. But my fellow, once again, like, you want to help them out. There was awesome experience for them. They actually made it a whole spring break. I just went with my dad for a few days out in Palm Springs and interviewed him to do a documentary about trying to get him in the Hall of Fame. Hasn't quite worked out yet. We're here still 6 years later, and on those expansion era committees, or however they've changed it, he still hasn't gotten over that threshold. But I'll just throw out this. He has the most wins of anyone other than Roger Clemens to not be in the Hall of Fame. 270, and I think that he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And then you factor in the fact that he proved, right, a lot of things is about him proving that you could that surgery worked, right? Because at the time, everyone thought that type of injury was your career was over. The fact that he pitched longer after he got that surgery in terms of seasons than he did before was huge in proving that guys can get hurt. And now look at how many guys are getting Tommy John surgery because they've evolved to throw so hard. And so that's why that documentary happened. It was just a combination of circumstances, and it turned into that, and it was something that I was passionate about too.
When we share this on the social media platforms, I'm going to ask you if you can find that link, if it's still somewhere out there, because I
think it's on my Twitter profile.
All right.
In my Twitter profile.
We'll tag the Twitter here on the social media handle so people can find it, because I think even you probably looking back now 6 years later, 7 years later, think, even you telling that story, hey, I'm a senior in college. I just called Tommy John, a legendary baseball player, or I got his info, his email. I'm going to his house with people that I know. He set, like, even the story, probably thinking back your perspective, you just don't know what you're doing as a senior in college, in the sense of maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. And then years later, like, wow, that was insane. Like, this actually happened. It came together, and all that through your career. Let's talk about network.
Not to mention, I rode on his golf cart around the complex too, along with the two women who came to help me. So that was fun.
Insane, man. So let's talk about networking, because I'll give this compliment to you and Jake Assman, who's another former guest on the show earlier in November as well. I would say truly, and like everybody that I know, I think the two best networkers are Jake Assman, who I've met, and you. And I don't know how you got so good at it or where it came from. But Eric, when you went through the process of landing your first job in the field, which ended up being a producer / board op role at 104.5 The Team, you were smart and persistent about reaching out. Let's give some advice on networking. Is it something that came natural to you? How did you figure out to be so good at this? Because this networking plays a huge role in your success in your career.
I mean, I wouldn't say it comes natural to me in the sense of, like, I'm very much kind of like leave people alone, like leave them to their business. But at the end of the day, when it comes to what you want to do, you have to be aggressive, and you got to kind of be early. Like, it's a clear cliche, but early bird gets the worm, or the squeaky tire gets the grease, whatever it is, the oil, whatever. Because basically, you're not going to get responses from anybody without not reaching out to them. So I think also too, it's not only about knowing people, but it's also about making the connections. Like, that summer, I got close to you. I want to say I got close to Dubs, like enough to where I felt comfortable. Like, I didn't look at it as bothering you or like intimidated. Maybe that's a credit to you as well. I'm going to reach out to guys. Like, why not? I mean, why not me? And why not that opportunity? And I think also too is like we got along, and I think I get along with a lot of different people, and I think it's important to not burn bridges either. But I think that might be helpful as well to why I've been able to network well. I push back on that a little bit, guys. I don't want to all of a sudden be known as this great networker and then just fall off a cliff. But I'll take it.
All right, I will let you be humble in the compliment there of maybe you don't even realize how good you are at it until you continue to go through your career. Because look, you get hired as a board op, you get hired as a producer, which is an entry level position, not really doing a lot of promo stuff, but maybe if needed, you'll do it. But slowly but surely, in that building, you work your way up, and everybody has a different goal when they step into a certain workforce. It could be, we're talking about radio in particular. Some people just want to be behind the scenes. Some people want to do sales. Some people want to do programming. it seemed as if your goal was always to be on the air, which is great. And one of the ways you got on the air was because you always got reps. Like, and you also told people like, hey, if you need somebody to fill in, I could be your guy. And sure enough, those opportunities came for you.
You remember the board op minute?
Yes. And I don't think it's actually changed since. Like, nobody thought. Let's explain that, because I think that right there in 2022 and 2023 is such a simple thing that young broadcasters would be like, why wouldn't you do that? Especially on the stream side, especially on the social side.
Yeah, so there is web, and then there's the station itself. But the web, as far as I understood, at least my internship, there was fills, if you will, like things that would just play on the web before they got back on air. And so one of those things was just like a short take. I think Dubs had a few of them, I think, in my internship. So when I got the job, I was like, okay, so how can I, get some reps? And so that's how I was like, all right, I'll just send in these board op minutes. And I didn't really listen to the stream, so I have no idea if anyone heard them or if they played. But what I do know is it showed initiative to you. I think it showed initiative to another person that we both worked for, Steve Richards. And so I think that helped me prove, whether it's they liked it or not, or they liked my go-getter. And at the very least, too, there was feedback. It's always great to get feedback from somebody. And so they were, I think Steve definitely gave me advice as well. Which led to the Sitting Sports Side podcast on 104.5 The Team YouTube page, which became another big thing that I enjoyed doing with a plethora of different people. And so that helped me eventually get into becoming a fill-in guy. And then next thing you know, there's me hosting along with Roger Wild on Big Word Sports. I mean, it happened kind of quick.
Yeah, let's look, that whole transition, right? Because you kind of saw the changes in the building, which is also very rare for somebody who gets into the field at 22, 23 years old, where you're seeing, okay, this person was here, now they're not. This person was here, now they're not. And that happened throughout both the midday time slot and the afternoon drive time slot. But for you, it became that midday where you become, after producing the show, the next in line, I guess, to use the Belichick, because I believe Steve Richards may have even used that term, next man up, where you're hosting with Rodgers. So it happens. We don't have to get to the behind the scenes stuff. I'm sure we'll get to more of that here in a second. But first, let's talk about how your role changed. Did you find yourself following people like Chris Honorado and Brady Farkas and Zach By and everybody else who had been in that role? Hopefully I didn't miss anybody there. I believe that's everybody who was before.
That's everybody.
That yeah. Stepping in that role as a co-host, how did that, if at all, change the way you walked in and prepped for a show?
That's a good question. Always asking the hard questions on getting there with guys. It really changed everything because, before, I was the producing for them for like a month or two before I was asked if I wanted the position. And there was no expectation of booking any guests. And there was no expectation of, blog posts or anything like that. But I think the main thing was, I helped produce, I helped grab sound for Roger, but this went from working with Roger to working with Roger. Like, you had to make sure that you were doing everything, because it's called Big Board Sports with Roger Wild, right? There's the with Roger Wild for a reason. Every time you listen to it on 104.5 The Team, it's Big Board Sports and then the bed plays. No, it's Big Board Sports with Roger Wild. So I felt like, for me, that I had to make sure I was doing everything that he wanted. So I kind of went to him and was like, hey, am I doing this right? And so he was very transparent right at the gate. Like, it's a very guest driven show. Likes to have 3 guests on every show. So that's where it really changed. And I was like, oh, so this is producing. Like, this is having to dig down. And so I had been dabbling with doing more production stuff with the show, but that was another thing. I was like, we can do more production things here. And so that's why I introduced doing intros at the top of every single hour. I mean, that was not even a thing. It wasn't even a thing for the first 3 or 4 years on 104.5 The Team. And then I was like, what if we do a rejoin? Like, at the top of all these hours, like, just kind of improve the production value of the show. I started thinking more outside the box, like, because I was a part of it. It was, like I said, it is Big Boy Sports with Roger Wild, but I did feel like I was more part of the show too. Being able to contribute and having that opportunity. So yes, the responsibilities changed. There was more pressure, but maybe I surprised myself a little bit too.
That's the exciting part about it. Adding your own flavor, adding your own personality, your own spice, like a good chef. Like, okay, that's a little Eric Hannmann right there. That's a little E on this. And that's a great part about that field. We should add this, though. This is important, especially for people who are trying to find that first job, because your hours are insane, because you aren't just working at 104.5 the team. You have a second job. Let's go through that, because that's really important, because you're grinding through two jobs. I think the hours we should go through, how insane your day was and for how long that shift of two jobs lasted.
Yeah. So in the times where I there's so many other crazy times that I could probably fill you in on. But we'll go to the scheduling of what it was like when I was working big board sports with Roger as his producer. So News Channel 13 is where I also worked. So I actually got that job first. Gus, you mentioned earlier in the podcast, I think you landed your first job. No, the first one was technically News Channel 13. So
okay.
Shout out to Wendy for, and I don't mean Wendy Williams or something like that. Wendy Albrecht, I think is how you pronounce it. So I don't want to butcher these last names, guys. So yes, the shift that I ended up getting was the afternoon shift, which that helped me out a lot too, to be the fact that I was able to be in the afternoon / night. And so you would Monday through Friday, I'm obviously in there 9 a.m. making sure everything is good to go before big board sports. I'm out of there hopefully by 1:30 after post show activities, and I had to be there at 3:30 to work the 4 o'clock news, the 5 o'clock news, 5:36, and then back for the 9 and 11. So yes, it was very full days. Those days for me would be my schedule turned into it was Wednesday through Saturday. So Monday and Tuesday I had the rest of the day to myself. Sunday, I had Sin Sports that Sunday in the morning, but most of the time, unless I picked up an extra shift at 13, I had the rest of the day on myself. But there were days where it's like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're working basically from 9 to midnight, 9 a.m. to midnight. So yeah, it was a grind, but I liked it too, because it actually helped, I would say, the radio show, because I'm hanging out with Roger watching sports Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He's doing his job, but during from 9 to after the 9. I didn't have to do anything. Like I had to be on call or do headlines, but I was pretty much free just to go in the newsroom and distract Roger by watching sports. He wouldn't never get distracted. He's very professional. He gets everything done. He knows how to block out stupid takes I'm having over there, or the UFC that I put on the TV. He's like, what are you watching? But I mean, it was a lot of fun, being in that environment with him, watching sports and kind of having his reactions live. And it helped out, I think, the radio show, because how often are co-hosts getting together and watching sports together? Ironically, like it's actually a fun thing to think about. Like, how much is Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max sitting together watching games? I'm sure they are. Sometimes I actually know for a fact that they have. But I'm just saying, like, that was consistently 3 days a week. We were hanging out more after the show, and I think it only benefited it, honestly. So I wouldn't trade any of the scheduling, for it all.
Those are 15-hour days for the keeping track at home that Eric was working with. Not a breeze, right? Like 15-hour days, no weekends off. If you heard that, maybe once in a while if the shift.
And I still try to hit the gym a little bit too, guys.
Right, and let's add one other thing there. In the addition to, at some point in your career, you get added to the Albany football and basketball, right? Like Albany sports gets swung into this kind of that same spot, which has now become, if you're a part of the Big Board Sports Show, you blend in with some of the broadcasts because the home of the Great Danes and Roger's been the voice. So if that wasn't enough, the 15-hour shift, you decided to add more to your plate.
Yeah, but it was just too good of an opportunity for me, honestly. And by that point, I'd already had the chemistry with Roger. I mean, I knew it was going to be something else that we could do great work together on. And he was very welcoming. He was very helpful in that process of not only getting me the opportunity, but leading me through the early days. But I honestly think that it was another thing. Like the chemistry was just so there, and it was a great opportunity for me. And so I knew I had to take it. Like that's just really what it comes down to on that. Even if the extra days, even if Monday and Tuesday, my usual days where I was able to go home, or even if a Sunday, it was worth sacrificing the rest of that day, because it was a great experience, very good experience with the university itself as well. It was really a pleasure, honestly. So yeah, it was more work, but I love doing it.
Someone's going to hear this show and be like, okay, so Eric Hannmann worked his way up from an intern to a board op, all the way to middays, all the way to Albany. Kids working 15 hours a day, doing everything everybody asks them. And then all of a sudden 2021 hits. I'm gone. Levac's gone 4 months later. They're looking for a new afternoon drive show. They're looking for a new program director. And people are going to look at you and be like, what the hell happened? So share as much or as little as you want, because I'm sure there's still some people in the capital region that are like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense that Eric's not there anymore.
Well, I mean, I think that they really liked me with Raj, and I liked being with Raj. So like we had such a good thing going, man. I mean, it was a fun show to work on. I want to think that the capital region enjoyed it. And they enjoyed the dynamic. I mean, there's still things that make me laugh about certain our arguments is a strong word, but just like knowing that like it's fun to push back on Roger. I know he can laugh at certain things. And we got together so well, and I think that's what it came down to was we just kind of had the cogs in the machine rolling. They didn't want to take me off of working with Roger, and that would have changed things dramatically, moving to the afternoons. And I think that was ultimately the reason why I didn't go to the afternoons. But I wouldn't change any of it, honestly. I think I like where I'm at right now, and yes, the goal ultimately is, and I know you probably got that on the note card too to ask, but the ultimate goal is to kind of get back on the air a little bit. But I'm enjoying ESPN right now.
You gave that a very smart, I guess we'll say, political, because I know you have ambition. So I'm going to let that sit. I'm going to let that stay as your answer, because that ambition in Eric Hannmann cannot be just calmed a bit, because that ambition comes up again, because if our visual audience has a little clue here, you are not in Albany. You're in Bristol, Connecticut, now as an employee of ESPN. How did it happen, man? How did you end up in Bristol, Connecticut? And say as much or as little as you'd like on this one as well, because it is your current employer. Don't want to give away too many secrets.
Yeah, so when you work with Roger, opportunities can happen. And, we work closely with Tim Kirchin and Freddie Coleman. And so, you bring up networking. It doesn't hurt to be like, hey, I applied to this job. Any help that you can do for me, it would be much appreciated, right? It doesn't hurt to do that, because both the guys that I mentioned want to see people succeed. They're just really down to earth people that I've been able to build, somewhat relationships with. I don't want to oversell it, but build relationships with. And so, when I applied for that job, I reached out and it just said, hey, look, I applied to this job. Any help would be great. Next thing you know, there's an interview, and second interview, and then a third interview, and then they offered me the job. And talking with Roger, because he really did become somebody that I trusted of helping me out in my career, and he said looked at me and really said, this is it, like this is it. So I knew I had to take it, and it's been the right choice.
There he is. Bristol, Connecticut, the goal of so many young sports broadcasters, whether it's on air or behind the scenes, showing up to work and seeing what you've seen for years of Sports Center and all the shows at ESPN Radio. So let's talk about it. What is your actual responsibilities in your job currently in November of 2022 at ESPN?
So yeah, this right now, November, current responsibilities. So I do work 5 days a week. The weekends are still busy for me, guys. So I'm still working on weekends. But I enjoy working on weekends because Saturday and Sunday mornings are when I get to produce the radio shows. So I'm producing Darian Mel on Saturday mornings from 7 to 10. And then I'm producing Best Week Ever on Sunday mornings, also from 7 to 10. And that, that's the football schedule because things change. Darian Mel will move back to 10 to 1 at some point, and Marty McGee will be 7 to 10 on Saturday mornings. So it is kind of like a fluid schedule sometimes with the changing seasons and football season really dictating those things. And then during the week, I help TV produce Canty and Carlin on the ESPN app, and then run the board for Bar and Han 1 day a week as well. So it's what's the word? A bevy. I'll use bevy. How about that? Yeah, smorgasbord. of responsibilities. If someone calls out or there's other opportunities that they need you to help with, your schedule could change. But those are a few things that I'm doing there, and none little, just being able to kind of see it from our perspective, guys. I don't know if I've shared this with you, but just kind of like seeing it from the perspective, because we, as someone that's worked for an ESPN affiliate, guys, you know how much we rely on certain cuts, or like, why is it this year, or sports beats and stuff like that.
It's an
I
inside
know
joke
how
for
that
you and
works
I.
now. Like, I know how that works from this end now, and it's fun, and so I know. Oh, so maybe this was why that didn't show up. But that's all I will say there, because like you said, they are my current employer. So
Secrets of the industry, but 4 different shows with a fluid schedule, weekends, getting up the morning. By the way, Dari and Mel, I heard you on there. I made sure I shot you a text, killing it when they let you do those on-air features, man. It is so cool hearing it happen. So there you are, dude.
I mean,
Doing
two
your
guys
thing.
that obviously, Mel's a legend, and Dari as well. He used to do the sports beats. I used to listen to him all the time when we were putting those in the system, and they're great to work with. I mean, they make it so easy. And then Peter Burns and Kitty George on Sunday morning, same thing. So it's a blast. It's one thing to have to produce a show and the stresses that can come with it, but it's another thing when you're working with people that can help you get through it. And so it's been a lot of great teamwork.
Is there any misconceptions for young broadcasters, young media people who are aspiring to get to where you are of ESPN that maybe you thought, oh, I didn't think that was a real thing, but it's a real thing? I know the most cliche one is the old ESPN commercials where anyone's walking in the hallway, but that's actually not that far off.
No, I mean, it's not that far off. I mean, there was one day where one of my coworkers said to me, I just had the Sports Center commercial. Remember with the devil in the hallway?
Yeah.
I just had that happen to me. There was the devil walking around, and he was getting in the elevator, and I said, going up, and he shook his head. I'm like, what? Yeah, this just happened. So yeah, that does happen, and then you see random people sometimes in the cafeteria that you can next thing you know, I mean, they stand out, obviously, some of these players, but going to pick up your grilled cheese, and then you see Carlos Boozer, ACC network analyst, and oh, okay, hey, what's up? Yeah, so you do see a lot of random. I mean, I saw Adam Schefter walking around, Taylor Twellman today doing U.S. soccer stuff. So yeah, you never know who eventually you're going to run into at times when you're just walking around the building, and so it isn't far off from that. No, I mean, you're not seeing random mascots, but yeah. I mean, there's I don't know if you know I don't know if you know who Charlie Arnold is
From WWE.
Yeah, WWE. She works for ESPN now. She does some UFC stuff and a lot of great stuff. I think First Take, Her Take podcast along with Elle Duncan, and I think I don't want to leave out the third person on that podcast, but it's slipping my mind right now. But yeah, I was. So I think there's a TV studio near the radio side, and on the way to the bathroom, there's like a corner where like you could easily. There's no like mirror thing to look at, so you could easily just have a head-on collision with someone. And I would say I want to say she's relatively short, but like 5'4", 5'6". Almost just totally decked her coming around that hallway. Like she wouldn't know who I am, and it was like, oh shoot, and you're almost ready to run into a person, and then you realize, oh, that's her. So yeah, you just never know. You watch out, like peek around the hallway, the edges of the hallways, because you don't want to run into a celebrity.
There you
like,
go. The misconceptions are not
break their
actually,
leg or something.
Right. They're not actually misconceptions. It's real. It's some of the stuff you see about the stories, they are all true. All right, I'll get you out on this because I know you're busy. You probably want to get to sleep. We're taping this late at night. You got another big shift on the way. For a young student, maybe at Fairfield, maybe out at Colony, Columbia, Scotia, Glenville, from your hometown, wherever. But I'm taping this in Glenville. Your hometown is East Greenbush. Advice for aspiring broadcasters: how can they get to where you are in your career right now?
You have to have respect for yourself and all that, all that good stuff. Like, do what you need to do, but it pays to say yes to a lot of things. The more you can say yes, the better equipped you'll be to move up, and also too, people will appreciate that. People appreciate that you helped out. Like, hey, we need someone here to do this. Can you do it? And you might be like, no, I really just wanted to go home, maybe crack open a beer and watch the game. But, you You got, yeah, fine. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll help you out, because people will remember it. And also too, like, especially to build off of that, say yes to certain things. Did I want to like necessarily work a lacrosse game at Fairfield University? Great lacrosse teams. Just not something that I would normally want to do on my Saturday mornings in college. But I said, you know what? I need that experience. So I think saying yes to a lot of different things. They say sleep is overrated. I disagree. You need to be able to pick 8 to 9 hours, but also to try your best to do as much as you can. And people will appreciate it, and it'll help you get further in your career.
Eric Hannmann, thank you for doing this, man. I know you're super busy, especially with this crazy time in sports. I'm so pumped that you're crushing it at ESPN. Keep up the great work. I know, and just a little tease too for maybe the future. I know maybe in a year or 2 or 3, knowing how ambitious you are and how hard of a worker you are, you might be in a different spot at ESPN. Who knows where your career is going to go coming up next, man. I can't wait to follow it. Keep crushing it. We'll be talking again soon.
I really appreciate it, guys, man. Keep up the great work yourself too, man. It's great stuff.
Thanks, dude. Talk to you soon. See ya.
Later, man. Appreciate it.